Let's cut straight to the chase. Reddit is dying. And I don't just say that because Reddit is losing its most important assets, its people, its moderators, its content creators, but because there's a multifaceted thing happening right now surrounding Reddit's application programmer interface, its API. And you may have heard of this recently, where Reddit has increased the price of its API effective later this summer, and it's going to make third-party applications unsustainable for the Reddit platform. There's so much happening with this. There's so many different facets of what's going on here, what the public knows about, and what I was able to piece together to maybe partly explain the Reddit drama today. But before we can go too much further, we have to go back in time to 2004 and look at the origins of Reddit and its popularity. In the early 2000s, there wasn't really a great way to get all the news and content from the different forums and sites that you would frequent. I still remember the days when I would have multiple tabs open and multiple windows open from the different forums I was visiting and the different sites, just so I could stay up to date with all the content happening across the internet. In short, there was no aggregator. But along came Digg, an aggregator site where people from all different areas of the internet could submit articles, videos, content to raise it up in popularity so that it would appear on the front page of Digg and therefore be sort of the front page of the internet. People loved Digg. Digg in the early 2000s was amazing. Like, you think about Reddit today and you think about going viral, that was Digg in 2004 when going viral didn't really mean anything yet. It just meant that your article or video or whatever had a ton of likes and comments and popularity on Digg. The obvious question there then becomes, well, how do you monetize a website like that? How do you monetize something that uses content that is aggregated from around the internet? Well, in 2010, the CEO, Jay Adelson, announced a complete site redesign. Everything was going to be a total overhaul. And when the new site launched, the infamous V4 version, so much stuff was broken. So many things were different. So many things just didn't make sense anymore. The overhaul was really a complete disaster. And primarily, its core functionality was just broken. Several super users, through gaming the new system, were able to keep certain content at the top of the front page at all times. That means that genuine content would rarely reach the front page of Digg. Obviously, people were pissed. Obviously, people didn't want that, and the mass exodus began. People stopped using Digg and started using something else. Reddit. Reddit actually started around the same time that Digg was becoming popular in 2004 and the early 2000s. Around 2005, several college students at the University of Virginia started the project and came up with a similar idea of aggregating content from around the internet to then serve to the masses a sort of front page of the internet. And with the downfall of Digg, Reddit became massively popular, going from this kind of weird niche website with weird niche communities to a massively popular, all-encompassing platform that actually had a compelling advertisement story and made it more accessible for advertisers to serve ads on the platform and for Reddit to make money. And so the wheels of capitalism goes round. And while its over 10 years of success now have been relatively smooth sailing, almost every year the communities have been mired by some major controversy, which brings us to today and the controversy at hand surrounding the API. If you don't already know, an API stands for Application Programmer Interface. It's basically just a really fancy way of saying I can use code to get and send content back and forth to your website or your service. And in Reddit's case primarily, you can use its API to fetch content from its communities or to post content, post comments, like comments, do all sorts of things. All of that is possible via its APIs, and you can actually build additional platforms and additional applications on top of that interface. At the time of Reddit's inception, when APIs were really all the rage, websites and services would share freely these services, these APIs, to enable a more connected and intertwined web where data could, in theory, flow freely and readily available across the internet. It's a beautiful picture of the internet. It's awesome. The idea and the ability to freely let that flow is maybe a little different than what we experience in the internet today, where things are more locked down, more expensive, and it's more difficult to let that information flow freely across platforms. On April 18th of this year, Reddit announced changes, primarily pricing changes, to its APIs. In short, their APIs went from being essentially free to now exorbitantly expensive. Now suddenly, third-party clients that have built a platform and application around the Reddit APIs are suddenly going to have to paying a lot of money. Let's look at probably the most public of these, the Apollo app, which is a very popular iOS application for Reddit. Here it is on my phone. It's an excellent application which provides a ton of really smooth, beautiful, and accessible features for accessing Reddit and getting content onto Reddit. By many estimates, the creator, Christian Selig, of the Apollo application has said that this will cost him now $20 million a year. $20 million a year. It's just him. It's a solo dev. It's a free application. There is a paid subscription version of it. But now, all of a sudden, the cost to operate the Apollo application goes basically from zero to now $20 million to access the Reddit APIs per year. And Reddit has not been responding to this public discourse well, I will say. They at one point said that Christian threatened them and threatened to blackmail them for over $10 million to go quiet. But hilariously, Christian was recording their conversations, which is legal in Canada for him to do without their consent. It's so weird that they took that misunderstanding and blew it up to be this whole threat, where I can understand how they could misunderstand it, but clearly they apologized and clearly they said, oh, we're sorry, you're not threatening us, we understand. You mean go quiet, as in a quiet down in the API. That's sort of a programmer slang where it's like, oh, this API is really noisy or quiet, or oh, this user is really noisy or quiet, as far as how much activity and compute time or API time that thing is actually causing. That's a really loud thing, is when it's using up a bunch of resources. That's loud. Quiet is in it's not using a bunch of stuff. It's not using a bunch of API resources. At one point, they also claimed that the Apollo application was just poorly written and inefficient, and if it had a rewrite of its backend, it could just be better and not have to pay so much money to be more efficient. And hilariously, Christian actually posted the code publicly for the backend on GitHub to say, here's the code. It's more than efficient. It's about as good as you could possibly have it. So Christian has kept all the receipts, but Reddit is not backing down. And unfortunately, Apollo will be shutting down this month on June 30th. So why is this all a big deal? Why is the whole third-party application conversation a problem? Well, for one, it's fairly well known that the default first-party Reddit application is just bad. It doesn't work half the time. It's difficult to play audio and video on it. It's just bad. Two, its accessibility features are also just missing and bad. So a lot of people with accessibility needs in order to access Reddit use a third-party application like Apollo. Three, many moderators use third-party applications like bots to access the Reddit API to then do better moderation and more efficient moderation with those third-party tools. That just can't happen when third-party applications can't access the Reddit APIs easily and cheaply. And finally, 4, the Reddit API will no longer serve not safe for work content to API calls. And I know what you're thinking. It's not just about not safe for work content. It's about moderation again. A lot of mods use automated tools, automated third-party tools, to do not safe for work content moderation in their communities. And if they can't get that in the downstream API, if they can't see that not safe for work content anymore in the APIs, then that means that communities just got a lot grosser and weirder, and they can't do automated moderating. You're just gonna see some nasty stuff now with people posting not safe for work content and it not getting auto-moderated. If you've been paying close enough attention in the tech space, then you know that this is not the first major tech company to do something like this, especially in the social media space. Recently, Twitter also had an API pricing increase where it now costs over $42,000 per month to access the APIs, ousting nearly every third-party application. major third-party applications like Tweetbot had to shut down and move to different platforms like Mastodon. And it suddenly just became totally infeasible to do research with the Twitter API, to have third-party client applications access the Twitter API, etc., etc. Now you can basically only use Twitter's first-party app. And of course, they were able to brag about sudden increase in the first-party application usage. But in my opinion, those are all vanity metrics. I'm sure Reddit is going to say the same thing. Oh, look at us, better first-party application access. But in reality, those metrics are flawed because it's going to be people fleeing from those third-party applications that are shutting down to the first-party application. Finally, I want to talk about why. Why would Reddit do this? Why would Twitter do this? Why is this a sudden trend within tech where all of these platforms are making their APIs exorbitantly expensive? A few reasons. One, the economy. The economy is just bad. Like, we all recognize that. We're basically in a recession, however you define a recession these days. And platforms want to find better and easier ways to make up that money. Like, I will give them some of that. Like, these APIs do cost real money and real compute and real infrastructure to run, and that's just expensive in the cloud. Not so expensive that they need $20 million from a single third-party application. Crazy, that's a lot of money. But especially in Reddit's case, they're really trying to tighten up the books right now. They are planning for a late 2023 IPO where they hope to make a successful exit into the public market so that they can cash in and make even more money. There's also been some wild speculation that a recent influx of cash from Tencent, a Chinese conglomerate, at a $3 billion valuation for Reddit, is leading them to make a lot of these sort of interesting financial decisions to boost up that evaluation as they approach IPO and to enable the Chinese market to get in as well. Maybe that's why they're not serving that not safe for work content over the API. If there's inevitably going to be a Chinese version of the app, they could just never serve that type of content to the Chinese market. The other thing that I think is interesting that we just have to talk about is the rise of AI and large language models today. These models are all trained on a massive amount of text input. And a really good place to get that massive amount of text input are places like Twitter, Quora, and Reddit. So what do? If somebody else like OpenAI is using your platform and your content to train these massively powerful models, well, that's value that they're essentially taking away from your business. So what do? Well, you make accessing that content programmatically more difficult and more expensive. Or in other words, a lot of these companies are locking down and battening down the hatches as the AI revolution and the influx of large language models into the market becomes more and more pronounced. But really, a lot of that is sort of wild speculation. Reddit has been pretty tight-lipped about their financial situations, about really why they're doing this in the first place. Overall, the communities on Reddit have definitely taken notice, and the broader community of the internet has absolutely taken notice. There's a planned blackout of many communities on Reddit on June 12th. And if you've been around Reddit long enough, you know that this happens from time to time when the sort of state of the platform is in question. And really what this means is that moderators of certain subreddits, most of the very, very big ones like RPC Gaming, will be shutting down the subreddit so that there's no content that can be viewed on that day or posted or commented on. Nothing. It's just down. It's gone. There have also been massive calls to leave the platform, and people have been actively looking for the next platform to go to. Like I said, I use Apollo. It's fantastic. It's a great app on iOS. The first-party client, however, not so much. So maybe in some cases, this is a blessing in disguise, so I can finally get off of Reddit, and Reddit itself will cure me of my Reddit addiction later this month. And like I mentioned, on June 30th, just before these API changes go into effect, Apollo and many other of these third-party applications will just shut down. They will just be no more. You have to remember that a lot of these third-party applications on the App Store and the Google Play Store, a lot of them are solo devs, 1 or 2 people at most, who have worked on this as a passion project and make enough on ads or on some subscription model to just get by. And maybe the obvious criticism here is, hey, don't build your livelihood on somebody else's platform. AKA, don't build an application that you depend on for your livelihood based on somebody else's API. That's fair and maybe okay criticism, but I would say that Reddit for years has been giving the signal that this API would essentially be free for all of the future to come, and that these third-party applications were a very important part of the Reddit ecosystem. Clearly, that's just not true. And clearly, the Reddit leadership is okay with removing that part of the ecosystem and forcing people onto the first-party application. I'm sure this story will continue to develop, and I'm sure that more will come out about why Reddit is doing this, or maybe they'll back down. Maybe they'll change the pricing, although that seems very, very unlikely at this stage. Again, the economy is just not great. They got to make money somehow. This seems like an easy cash grab, and more people will be using the first-party application, which has more streams to direct revenue. And the AI revolution. Large language models are being trained on a lot of Reddit data, so they're going to shut it down. They're going to try to keep that content in-house as much as possible. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you're going to be doing. Are you going to continue to use Reddit on the first-party client, or God knows, maybe on the browser? Let me know in the comments. And I'll continue to watch this story, so make sure to follow along for more. I will catch you next time. Peace, everybody.